Push! This hurts too much. Just push!
Keep going, honey. It's going to be all right.
Shut up! This is all your fault.
My dad hugged me as we watched in horror. My mom was giving birth to my baby sister, and I don't know whose idea it was to let me in the delivery room, but there I was. 7-year-old girl who received a rude awakening because she seriously believed that babies grew in cabbage patches. After some more screaming and hurling horrible expletives at my dad, my baby sister Miriam was born. She was covered in goo and yucky stuff, but when they cleaned her up, I thought she was the cutest person I'd seen in my life. It's too bad I didn't think like that forever. Keep watching to find out how she completely ruined my life. Before she was born, I was mommy and daddy's little princess. I was an only child, so the world revolved around me. They bought me the best clothes and toys and let me have almost everything I wanted. I went to the best schools and they tried to get me involved in almost every single extracurricular activity. When I was 3 years old, I was enrolled in gymnastics, ballet, and piano. I also had a private language tutor and a lady who'd come to teach me how to paint every Saturday. But it seemed like I sucked at everything. In gymnastics and ballet, it was kind of like I had 2 left feet, and I had no sense of rhythm in piano class. I could never remember my scales, and no matter how many times my teacher tried to teach me a song, I could never play it properly. I couldn't read music no matter how hard I tried. I couldn't paint either, and the only language I could speak was English. Eventually, my parents stopped all of my extracurricular activities and just let me stay at home to play with my toys. I thought they did this because they really loved me and didn't want me to be miserable. Apparently, they'd just given up. Decided I was useless and stopped trying to help me develop any talent. Because maybe I just didn't have a talent. And then one day my mom announced to my dad that she was pregnant. They looked so happy, and I joined in their happiness not knowing that this new baby would make everything different for me. A few days after my mom's very difficult delivery, my sister Miriam was brought home. It seems like we were all equally obsessed with her. We were always fighting to hold her, play with her, and feed her. My mom also hired an extra nanny to help with her so that she could take a break sometimes. So really, I liked my little sister in the beginning. Then I realized she was a bit smarter than the other babies. She could speak almost perfectly when she was only about 1.5. She wasn't annoying like other babies who always fussed all of the time. And she said nice things to me.
Frida, you're so pretty. Frida, I want to be just like you.
But when she was 3, my parents enrolled her in all of the extracurricular activities. The same things I used to do when I was her age. This was when I realized that there was a huge difference between the two of us. She was absolutely brilliant at everything. Every single thing. In gymnastics, she was at the top of her group and always won gold medals. In ballet, she was always given the lead role and was sent into the class with the older students because she was so advanced. By the time she was 5, she could play some of the most difficult classical pieces on the piano. And her art? Wow. It was honestly unreal. Ordinary 5-year-olds could not paint and sketch as perfectly as she did. I don't think university-level art students were that good. My parents also decided to homeschool her because they thought she was too brilliant to attend ordinary school. They brought in different teachers on different days of the week, and they were able to teach her at her level. By the time she was 6, she could speak 5 different languages fluently: English, Spanish, Japanese, Mandarin Chinese, and German. This was also when my parents became overly obsessed with her, and it seemed like they forgot all about me. It was always Miriam this and Miriam that. I felt a bit sad, but I was happy for my sister. Maybe she'd become filthy rich someday and I could just have her take care of me, I thought. But over time, it started to hurt more and more. Like this time my science teacher organized a hike through the forest to examine different plant species. There were about 20 of us, and the beginning was thrilling. It was amazing to be around so much green as I was so accustomed to being in the city all the time. But I'm a really slow hiker, and our guides left me behind everyone else. At one point, I remember being distracted by a very colorful butterfly. I started chasing it for a while, and then it flew up so high, it was like it disappeared into thin air. I looked around and realized I'd lost everyone. I tried to retrace my steps, but it was impossible. Hello? Is anyone around? Can anyone hear me? Help! I'm lost! But no voices answered. I sat on a rock and started to cry. And when I got tired of crying, I looked for more butterflies. And then I started crying again when I realized that no one was coming to find me. It was starting to get dark. After a few hours, I was sitting alone in the darkness. I closed my eyes because all of the noises in the forest were scary. Then suddenly, I heard some voices and saw some little lights. At first, I thought that maybe they were wild animals, but I realized they were people. Help! Help! I screamed. The lights came closer and a kind-looking man took my hand and said,
Are you Frida?
Yes, I'm so scared.
It's okay now. We'll bring you home. We're firefighters and we've been looking for you for a while. I'm so glad we found you.
He carried me to the rest of the group and brought me back to the place where the bus had stopped before we began our hike into the forest. My science teacher was still there, and I guessed that all my classmates had gone home already.
Oh my gosh, Frida. I was so worried about you. I'm sorry we didn't keep a better eye on you.
It's okay. Where are my mom and dad?
Well,
What? Where are they?
when I called them and explained the situation, they told me that your sister had a very important piano recital tonight and they weren't willing to miss it.
They didn't care?
Well, I wouldn't say...
They knew I was lost in the forest and they didn't even care? They just went to Miriam's piano recital instead? I broke down into tears. I cried more than I had cried when I was all alone in the darkness in the forest. The firefighters and my science teacher took me home. When I got there, I walked through the door and my parents were sitting with Miriam at the dinner table. It looked like they were having a celebration. There was cake, balloons, and ice cream even. What's going on?
Miriam did so well at her recital tonight. She was invited to be a guest on a popular talk show. This is great. She's going to be famous.
Did no one care that I was lost in the forest?
Someone would find you eventually. Don't take it personally. Now go wash up and come and eat your dinner.
I marched to my room and refused to come out for the rest of the night, even though I was starving. I was angry for the rest of the week, but my parents didn't seem to care at all. So I decided a new tactic to get their attention. I'd always been a well-behaved student, and all my teachers loved me. I had some pretty nice friends too, but my new strategy would cause all of that to change. I was determined to become the most horrible, most disgusting student at school so that my parents would have to come in all the time. I wanted to embarrass them and make them feel terrible. I started very mildly in geography class one afternoon.
So, Frida, can you tell us what the capital of South Africa is?
Why don't you open up the darn textbook and find the answer yourself?
Frida,
What?
that behavior is uncalled for. Go to the principal's office.
Anything to get out of this boring class. My classmates' mouths dropped. I laughed and waltzed to the principal's office. I sat there for a while until my teacher came and called me inside. We sat with the principal, who said he wouldn't call my parents because it was the first time I'd ever done something like this. Principal Roberts, don't you think my parents should know about this?
I think that just a detention is enough for now. Go back to class and be a good girl, okay?
I realized I'd have to try a little harder. When I got home that afternoon, I sat in my room to brainstorm. I needed the right look to go with my new attitude. I threw out all of my colorful clothes and ripped a few holes in my black jeans. The next morning, I looked totally goth. I was a completely different person. I walked out of the house to catch the bus, and my parents didn't even notice that I'd changed. For the next month, I gave as much trouble as I could. I was rude to teachers, refused to do my homework, and even started pushing little kids around, hoping they'd tell their teachers so that mine would call my parents. What eventually did the trick was when I poured a bottle of dishwashing liquid in the hallway before lunchtime one day. When everyone came rushing out of the class to go to the cafeteria, they all slipped and fell on top of each other. It was hilarious. Principal Roberts came storming out of his office.
Who is responsible for this?
Me, I shouted happily. He called me into his office and called my parents right away. They arrived after a few minutes looking confused.
What is this about? I have to pick up Miriam in 10 minutes.
Your daughter has changed. She's become one of our most challenging students, and we need your help. What did she do?
The principal told them everything, and they looked at me like they were disappointed. Yes, it's working, I thought.
We will deal with you at home. Let's leave.
We left school, and although my parents were upset, I was happy because at least I made them feel something. But you know what? We went to pick up Miriam, and they asked her what she wanted for dinner, and they forgot all about me. They didn't even give me a lecture or anything. What rubbish. I was so angry. When I got home, I went upstairs and locked myself in my room. Maybe I'd have to do something more drastic. Maybe I could run away, but they probably won't notice. And then it came to me. I was going to burn the house down. Yes, you heard that right. I was going to burn my own house, and I was going to do it that same night. When I thought that everyone was asleep, I went downstairs and threw a few pieces of newspaper on the kitchen floor. Then I found every flammable substance I could find and poured it all over everything. After that, I lit a match and watched the blaze. I realized I'd have to leave quickly, but I'd forgotten my backpack upstairs in my room. I ran back upstairs to get it, and as I passed my parents' room, I could hear them speaking.
We have to give her back to the lab. That was the deal.
But she's our daughter.
I know, but we signed a contract.
Yes, but Miriam is still a part of us.
A deal is a deal. We agreed to be a part of this experiment, to see if her cells could be altered before birth so that she could be smarter than everyone else. The deal was that we had to give her back now.
Fine, we'll give her back tomorrow. Too bad we'll be stuck with Frida. Wish we could give her back to the lab instead.
I couldn't believe my ears. So that's what it was all along. That's why she was so smart. But still, did they have to hate me? I started smelling the smoke from downstairs and realized I had to get out quickly. I got my backpack and was about to run down the stairs alone when I thought of Miriam's cute little smile when she was a baby. I couldn't leave her there. We both had to run, and I don't know where we were going to go, but we had to leave. I went into her room, shook her awake lightly, and told her that we had to leave. She changed her clothes and followed me without asking questions. We ran down the stairs, and just as we opened the front door, the smoke detector went off. We ran to the bushes across the road, and I told Miriam what I'd heard our parents saying.
Where are we going to go?
I don't know, but I'll make sure you aren't taken to the lab, that's for sure. We've been on the run since then. We've traveled far enough so that no one recognizes us, and right now, we live with a kind old lady who has this little cottage in the countryside. She really seems to think that we're her grandchildren, and she treats us very kindly. Oh yeah, and I'm sure you want to know what happened to our parents. Their house was partially burnt. The firefighters managed to save a piece of it, but they haven't been looking for us, and I'm not really sure why. But who cares?
This week's topic will be ethics. Throughout the week, we'll answer the following questions. What is ethics? What are examples of ethics?
I hated Mondays. I bet I could get away with a nap. Nothing fun ever happened at Oakwood High, so what would I miss if I just zoned out for 10 minutes? Nothing, right? Wrong. Turns out, we were about to have a very interesting Monday. Stick around and find out how a teacher almost lost his life for being too enthusiastic about his job. I closed my eyes and my mind went to my best friend Jason and that almost kiss a few weeks ago.
This week's topic will be ethics. Throughout the week, we'll answer the following questions. What is ethics? What are examples of ethics?
I could have sworn Mr. Scott said this exact same thing right before I dozed off. Mr. Scott, are you all right?
Sure am, Lynn. Is something the matter?
You just said the same exact thing you said 10 minutes ago, word for word.
Lynn, I just started the lesson now. 10 minutes ago, I wasn't even in this class.
He's crazy. Must be all the ink he inhales burying his face in so many books.
Allison, that's not a nice thing to say about anyone, much less your teacher. Detention for you and anyone else who disrupts my class. Good morning, class. This week's topic will be ethics.
I'm right. You are crazy. You just sent me to detention while you should be in a psych ward.
Why would I send you to detention, Allison? I literally just walked through the door.
Whatever. I'm out of here. I'm not waiting until you start foaming from your mouth and asking us to take you to our leader.
Good morning, class. This week's topic will be ethics.
The whole class erupted. While some students ran out of the classroom, I remained in my seat, all my focus on Mr. Scott. I got out of my seat and slowly approached him.
Lynn, would you please go back to your seat? I'm about to begin the class, unless you need something. And why is the class almost empty today?
Mr. Scott, I was cut short when the school principal walked in.
Mr. Scott, could you please follow me to my office? That is, if you don't need to return to your mothership.
The principal laughed nervously, and a few students joined him.
What's this about, Turner?
Well, it's been brought to my attention that you're acting strange, and after watching the videos, I have to agree. Please come with me.
What are you talking about? I just got here. Haven't even started my lesson.
Mr. Scott, please, don't make this any harder than it already is. Parents are calling my office demanding I assure them of their children's safety. Students are running up and down claiming you've been replaced by an alien. I need to contain the situation before we have a riot on our hands.
Mr. Scott got up from his desk and followed Principal Turner out of the classroom. Lynn's phone.
Of course it's your phone, unless you've been replaced by an alien too. Do you have a bald head and huge eyes occupying half your face?
Suddenly, there were butterflies in my stomach. Jason, not you too. Mr. Scott is not an alien. He's probably just sick or exhausted. How did you hear about it anyway? Isn't your school like in the middle of nowhere?
Haha, contrary to popular belief, us public school goers own phones too. The videos of your teacher going cuckoo are all over the internet. How's the situation on the ground?
Situation on the ground? It's just a few students overreacting and making ridiculous claims. I'm sure most just want an excuse to skip class.
Okay, if you say so, but promise to call me if Mr. Scott starts to shapeshift or grow two heads.
Bye, Jason. I hung up before he could say anything else. I felt like the butterflies would fly right out of my mouth. Then Principal Turner would truly lose his mind. The school public address system cackled and Principal Turner started to speak.
Hello everyone, this is your principal. I'm sure by now you're aware of all the unusual events that occurred earlier. I'd like to assure every student that there is no threat to our safety. I kindly ask that students return to class. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the day.
There were a few groans and protests from students who clearly preferred alien hunting to going back to class. On Thursday, while at lunch, a police car arrived at the school. 2 uniformed policemen got out and were greeted by a nervous-looking Mr. Turner. Together, they walked towards the administration building. This must be about Mr. Scott, I thought to myself. He was still not in school, and nobody seemed to have information on his whereabouts. I considered following them and eavesdropping, but I decided to wait and talk to Mr. Turner later. I was chair of the journalism club, and I could use that as an excuse to go see Turner. Mr. Turner, is everything okay? I saw the police and wondered if something was wrong. Is this about Mr. Scott? Is he okay? That's his car, right?
Lynn, the officers were just checking on the school after Monday's scare. Please, go back to lunch.
Where's Mr. Scott anyway? I thought he'd be back to school by now.
He's receiving treatment at the Oak General Psychiatric Ward. I visited him yesterday, and I'm sure he'll be back soon. Now, go back to your lunch.
After school, I went straight to Jason's. We hadn't spoken since he called to cancel our meeting, but I hoped he'd be happy to see me. I was dying to share with him what I'd seen and heard during lunch. I rang his bell, and the door was answered by his mom.
Lynn, hello. Here to see Jason? He's not home, but you could call him and find out when he'll be home.
That's all right, Mrs. Brown. I can come back later. I was walking down the steps of their front door when Jason's car drove in.
Look, Jason's home. Please, come in.
Sure thing, Mrs. Brown. Can I talk to Jason first? We'll be right in.
No problem, Lynn.
Jason got out of his car and stopped when he saw me. I suddenly felt foolish for thinking I could show up unannounced and expect him to be happy to see me. I'm sorry I didn't call before coming. I'll leave if that's what you want.
Leave? I was gonna call you tonight. I'm glad you're here. Can we go for a drive and talk?
We got into his car and he turned it back on, backing out of the driveway. Minutes later, he pulled up to a dirt road behind the school property line and parked next to a huge oak tree.
So, remember my big sister Jess? She sort of knows Mr. Scott. Actually, it's more than that. She and Mr. Scott are dating.
What? Are you serious?
Positive. Wait, there's more. So, after the drama on Monday, she called him, but he didn't answer. She went over to his house and he wasn't home. Yesterday, she came over to your school to see if he was back. Your principal told her that Mr. Scott was admitted at Oak General. She drove to the hospital only to be told that there wasn't any Aiden Scott admitted. Lynn, a missing persons report has been filed by Mr. Scott's brother. Jess is going out of her mind, especially after she was questioned by police.
Jason, are you sure? Principal Turner claimed to have visited Mr. Scott at the hospital yesterday.
Then he lied. Wait, you spoke to him? When?
Today, during lunch, some policemen showed up at school, and when I saw them with Turner, I followed them. After they left, I walked up to Turner and asked him what was going on.
Lynn, look, there's a car approaching.
The car drove past us and onto a clearing a few meters ahead. Jay, that's Principal Turner's car. What is he doing here? I got out of Jason's car and ran towards Turner's car.
What the heck, Lynn? Have you completely lost your mind?
No, Jay. Something is going on, and I think Turner is involved somehow. Mr. Turner, it's me, Lynn, from school. I'm here with Jason. Please open your window. The car door opened so fast, it knocked me on my butt. Out came Mr. Turner, but before I could react, he ran across the field into some shrubs.
Lynn, are you hurt? I swear if he bruised you, I'll...
It's all my fault. I'm so sorry.
Allison, what are you doing in Turner's car? Why are you crying? Did he do something to you? Allison could barely get a word out as she sobbed uncontrollably.
Mr. Scott. Turner. Oh God, I'm so sorry.
Allison, you're not making much sense. You said something about Mr. Scott? Do you know where he is? The police and his family are looking for him.
It wasn't supposed to be this way. All I did was tell him my secret. I didn't mean for him to get hurt. I'm so sorry.
Mr. Scott is hurt? You hurt him?
Oh, no. Not me. Dan, Mr. Turner did. I know where Mr. Scott is, but I don't know if he's alive or dead.
Allison broke into fresh sobs, and she was close to being hysterical now. In the distance, we heard police sirens, and soon we saw red and blue flashing lights approaching us.
I called the police. I also called Jess.
Soon the field was flooded by flashing lights from 3 police vehicles. Several uniformed officers ran towards.
Good evening, kids. My name is Detective Ryan Bailey. I believe one of you called the station claiming to have information on an active missing persons case.
That'd be me. Allison here told us that she knows where Mr. Scott is. Tell him, Allison.
He's at the school in the storage room, next to the principal's office.
The detective spoke briefly to the uniformed officers who escorted Allison to one of their cars. We informed him about Turner running, and he wrote it down. After the detective left, Jason and I drove to the school and parked outside the gate, then walked to the administration block. An ambulance was parked in front of the main entrance. Jay, look, that's Mr. Scott on the stretcher. Paramedics carried him into the ambulance. As the ambulance left, blaring its siren, we were joined by a man who introduced himself as Mr. Aiden's brother Sam. Let's follow the ambulance to Oak General. My mom is on duty tonight, and I bet she'll let us talk to Mr. Scott. When we arrived at Oak General, there was one police car parked near the ambulance entrance. I called my mom, and she met us at the hospital reception.
Lynn, dear, I heard what happened to your teacher. Do you know who did this to him and why?
Mom, hey, we don't know the whole story yet, but we're hoping you'd take us to his room. He might talk to us.
Sure, but only for a few minutes. I could get in trouble for this.
Minutes later, we were beside Mr. Scott's hospital bed. Mr. Scott, how are you feeling? What happened to you?
Lynn, hi. I'm feeling much better. They've got me on IV fluids. Well, it all started on Monday when I went to your class planning to fake mental illness.
Mr. Scott, what has gotten into you?
We were in Principal Turner's office and I knew I was in huge trouble. It was time to come clean. Mr. Turner, I'm sorry about all this. When I came up with the plan to fake a memory lapse, I did not anticipate the chaos it would bring. I thought it would be a harmless social experiment that would benefit my students at the end of the week. I wanted to gauge my students' reaction to mental illness. You see, this week is Mental Health Awareness Week, and...
You did what now? You mean to tell me that you're not actually sick?
I sat there as Mr. Turner all but fired me. There was a knock on his door and he excused himself and left. Minutes later, the door opened and I thought Turner was back, only to see that it was Allison. Allison, what are you doing here? Have you been crying?
Is Turner here?
He was, but he just stepped out briefly. Is everything okay?
Not really. I'm here because Turner is not picking my calls. He's been avoiding me all week, and I don't know what to do because I'm pregnant.
Oh, Allison, have you told your parents? Why come to Turner? What about the father of the baby?
It's Turner. I told him I was pregnant and he has been quiet since. I need him to tell me what to do.
Allison, are you sure? Mr. Turner is not only the principal of this school, He's married and at least 30 years your senior. Be careful you don't ruin a good man's name over a prank. How old even are you?
Relax. I'm 20 years old. If you don't believe me, then ask him. Doesn't matter anyway. You'll forget this conversation any minute now.
With that, she ran out the door in tears. I stood up to run after her, but bumped right into Mr. Turner.
Was that Allison I saw run out of here?
Please tell me it's not true. You got that girl pregnant? She's 30 years younger, for God's sake, not to mention your student.
Could you keep your voice down? You're in no position to be passing judgment. The only thing standing between you and losing your job is me. I'm willing to forget your little confession if you walk away from this Allison situation. I have it under control, and I'd appreciate it if you leave her to me.
You must be out of your mind if you think I'll help you destroy a young woman's future. I couldn't believe my ears. As I stood up ready to leave, Mr. Turner charged at me like an enraged bull, and I went sprawling on the office floor. He picked a heavy trophy from his desk and hit me on the head. Everything went black. When I came to, I didn't know where I was. My arms and legs were bound to a chair. Turner was looming over me. There was a bright light above him that gave him a halo. He held a bottle of water to my mouth and asked me to drink. He came back a couple of times, but only to issue threats. I thought for sure he'd kill me or I'd die of dehydration.
We were all stunned. I couldn't believe Mr. Turner was capable of such deeds. We said our goodbyes to Mr. Scott and wished him a quick recovery.
A few days later,
Lynn, did you hear? They've arrested Mr. Turner. He was hiding out at the old abandoned Ferguson farm. He's confessed to everything. Allison and her parents left town. What do you think will happen to Turner?
I think he'll be charged with the assault and kidnapping of Mr. Scott. He could go to jail for very many years.
Bang, bang, bang. Rick and I lit the firecrackers and threw them down the street.
Rick? Gordon? I hope you aren't the ones bursting those firecrackers out there.
Mom yelled from the yard.
No, Auntie!
Rick yelled back. We waited about 5 minutes before we started our shenanigans again. Rick, check this out.
Gordon, no!
But it was too late. Gemma, Alicia's friend from next door, called out to her and she ran right in front of me. The firecracker exploded. The cry that Alicia let out will haunt me for the rest of my life. Rick, Gemma, and I ran to Alicia, who was curled up in a ball in the middle of the street holding her ears.
Alicia!
Mom screamed as she ran into the street and knelt next to Alicia. Dad scooped Alicia up and put her into the back seat of the car. Mom hopped into the car beside her and Dad jumped into the driver's seat and the tires screeched as Dad pulled out of the driveway. Aunt Sybil, Rick's mother, and his father, Uncle Reuben, together with Rick, stayed with me until Mom, Dad, and Alicia came home. All the other family members left shortly after Alicia was taken to the hospital. It seemed like forever, but the front door opened and my family walked through the door.
So, what did the doctors say?
Aunt Sybil asked Mom. Mom just shook her head and escorted Alicia to her bedroom. Dad sat with us.
After running some tests, Alicia no longer has any hearing in her right ear and severe hearing loss in her left ear.
Dad, Dad cut me off with a raise of his hand.
Let's all get some sleep and we'll talk about it later.
Life changed drastically for my family, especially Alicia. Even though I apologized to my parents and Alicia for what I did, it never took away the consequences of my actions. Every day I had to wake up knowing that my sister was deaf because of me. It was a heavy burden to bear. Alicia dropped out of school and she no longer played the clarinet. Since Alicia was age 5, she wanted to be a clarinet player in an orchestra, and I ruined everything. I tried apologizing to her with letters and gifts, but every morning I'd see them by my bedroom door. The hardest part for me was seeing my sister pull away from us. She stopped interacting with us. She only came out to eat meals and use the bathroom. Dad pretended as though it didn't affect him, but for every meal Alicia wasn't at the table, Mom cried and left the table early, leaving her meal untouched. During one of Alicia's visits to the doctor, Dr. Green introduced my parents to a specialist named Dr. Holland. He told my parents he would need to do 2 surgeries of a bone conduction implant, which fits part of the device into Alicia's inner ear. Once that was completed successfully, the other part of the device could be worn on a headband with the device by her ear. Dr. Holland told them that the cost would be between $10,000 and $17,000. You know I can help with the cost. I walked into the kitchen as my parents tried to brainstorm ways to get money to fund the surgeries. I can work after school and on weekends.
Son,
Dad said.
we can't allow you to do that.
Okay, then what about if I get my friends together and we do some fundraisers to get the money? He nodded his approval to me. Later that week, when I got home from school, Dad's friend, Mr. Alexander, was there chatting with Mom and Dad. After I greeted them, Mr. Alexander turned to me.
So, Gordon, I heard that you're looking for a job.
Yes, sir, but my parents won't allow me to, with school and all.
Maybe they'll let you work for me. I'm looking for a new courier. You could work for me 3 days a week. You'll get $300 a week plus tips. But if your grades drop, then that's it.
I looked at Mom and Dad eagerly. My eyes pleaded with them.
You've got a deal.
Mom said to me.
But if your grades drop,
I shook Mr. Alexander's hand and thanked him. He told me to come to his office after school tomorrow and we'd get started. The next day when I arrived at the office, Mr. Alexander had a suit, tie, and shoes waiting for me. I got dressed and went back to Mr. Alexander's office where he gave me the addresses and the packages. When I came back, Mr. Alexander showed me to my cubicle where I completed my homework till it was time to leave the office. At around 8 p.m., Mr. Alexander and I pulled up to my house. He opened his wallet and handed me $500.
This is your tip for today. I was happy when your parents allowed you to take this job. I tried to help them, but they are a stubborn couple. I know you'll make good use of this.
I thanked Mr. Alexander, hopped out of the car, and disappeared into the house. The next week, while I was home alone in the afternoon, I heard a knock on the door. When I opened the door, in front of me stood a well-dressed man. Good afternoon, can I help you with something?
Good afternoon. I'm Agent Oxford.
He flashed his ID before me, then showed me a picture of a woman.
Do you know this woman?
I've seen her around. I don't know her. What is this all about? I asked suspiciously.
I'm in the middle of an investigation, and I need you to plant a device in her office.
I think I'll have to talk to my parents first. Maybe you can come back when they're home? I began to close the door, but Agent Oxford pushed the door open.
Your parents have known this lady for 15 years, and involving them will be a conflict of interest. The agency is willing to pay $3,000 if you plant the device successfully.
Well, if that's the case... Agent Oxford handed me the device.
When you plant the device, I'll drop off the money.
He walked away without another word. A few days later, I was able to plant the device successfully in Miss Pitt's office. As promised, Agent Oxford made contact with me after I planted the device and gave me the $3,000 as promised. 2 weeks after planting the device, I was shocked when I saw Miss Pitt's face on the news. She was reported missing by her family, and the main suspect was her ex-husband, Andrew Oxford. I knew I couldn't tell anyone about the device I planted or the fact that Agent Oxford asked me to plant it. If I told Mr. Alexander, I'd be fired for sure, and we only had $6,000 more to raise for Alicia's surgery. I had no idea what to do. The next day, when my parents took Alicia to the doctor, Agent Oxford showed up. Why didn't you tell me that Miss Pitt was your ex-wife? What did you do?
Do you really think if I was the person who took her that I'd be on your doorstep right now?
Agent Oxford lifted an eyebrow at me before he slipped inside the house.
Listen, I don't have much time. We've made a big breakthrough in the case, and I need you to plant another device.
Are you kidding me? After what happened to Miss Pitt? Agent Oxford cleared his throat.
As I was saying, I need to plant another device in this house, in your parents' study.
Is anything going to happen to my parents?
If you don't plant the device, something might.
I'll plant it today if I receive double payment this time.
Deal.
Agent Oxford gave me the device and slipped out of the house. As soon as Agent Oxford left, I planted the device in my parents' office. The next day was Saturday. My parents and Alicia spent the entire day running tests and preparing for the surgery. Agent Oxford stopped by and dropped off the money. That night, when my parents came home, I told them I had the remaining $6,000 after our car wash today. I know I told my parents a little white lie, but it was for a good cause. Mom hugged me and Dad ran to call Dr. Holland to schedule Alicia's surgery. That night, while I was getting ready for bed, someone slipped a piece of paper below the door. I read, "Thank you for everything you did. Love, Alicia." I smiled and went to bed. The following week, Mr. Alexander came to dinner twice, and both times, he and Dad retired to the study after dinner. By the end of the week, Dad said he and Mr. Alexander booked a business trip and will be leaving Saturday evening. About a week later, I arrived home about an hour earlier than expected. I saw a package with Mom's name on it by the front door. I picked it up and went inside. "I'll just put it in the office for Mom," I mumbled to myself. The look of shock that washed over Mom's face when I opened the door took me by surprise. Then, I realized why Mom reacted the way she did. Also in the room was Miss Pitt. "What are you doing here?"
Roseanne and I have been friends for years.
Mom answered. I sank into one of the office chairs. I was totally confused. So did Dad even go on a business trip with Mr. Alexander? Mom and Miss Pitt stared at me.
Well,
Mom began. Miss Pitt interrupted her.
your dad actually went on a rescue mission to save me. With his help, I was able to escape. But we had a mole in our agents, and now your dad is captured.
A mole? Agents? Mom, what is going on?
The only thing you need to know is Mr. Alexander was responsible for Miss Pitt's kidnapping. He is a very powerful man and has his hands in the police and justice system, so it's hard to take him down. Dad and I have been trying for over 15 years.
So what's going to happen to Dad?
Well, your mom is one of the best agents on the field, so she has to go into the field.
But what about Alicia's surgery? And who's going to stay with us when you leave?
Alicia's surgery is 2 weeks away. Dad and I will be home long before then. Roseanne has offered to watch after you guys while we're gone.
Later that night, Mom dropped us off by Roseanne. She thanked her friend, kissed Alicia and I goodbye, and left. Roseanne showed us to our rooms. Alicia's room was right next to mine. I entered the room, placed my things on the ground, and lay on the bed. I fell asleep, and around 1 a.m. I needed to get some water, so I left my room and began to walk downstairs. Halfway down the stairs, I heard Miss Pitt and another person talking. It was Mr. Alexander.
Well, we got rid of the loose ends.
Miss Pitt said.
Now, we can go forward with the next stage of our plan. Do you have them secured till pickup?
Yes, they are at the abandoned warehouses over at Gulpole Pier. As soon as the dawn breaks, Mr. Telesford will arrive to take them away.
I shielded my breath and snuck back into my room. I needed to get to Mom and Dad. I looked up and said, I know we haven't spoken in a while, but please keep Alicia safe. I slid my sneakers on quickly and climbed through the window. Just as I passed the tree right in front of Miss Pitt's house, I felt a hand over my mouth and someone pinned my arms. I began to fight, then heard a familiar voice behind me.
Gordon, it's me.
I spun around and came face to face with Agent Oxford.
So I take it you found out where they hid your parents?
I nodded.
Okay, let's go. And don't worry, we have eyes on your sister upstairs in her closet. She's safe.
I followed Agent Oxford a few houses down to a black van. We hopped inside and I told the driver the location. On our way there, 4 other black vans fell in line behind us. As soon as we got to the location, Agent Oxford instructed me to stay in the van, and he told the driver if they weren't out in the next 15 minutes to call for backup. I watched, and Agent Oxford and the agents from the other vans slid into the shadows, then entered the warehouse. These 15 minutes were the most excruciating minutes of my life. It felt as though time slowed. 15 minutes felt like 50 years. Suddenly, the driver started the van and I saw Mom, Dad, and Agent Oxford running towards the van. As soon as they jumped in, the van sped off. Mom, Dad, are you okay?
We're fine. Nothing a little R&R won't fix.
So what's going to happen to Mr. Alexander? Just then, Agent Oxford got a phone call. I noticed that we weren't heading back to Miss Pitt's. Hey, where are we going?
Home to your house so you can pick up a few things, then to a safe house.
But what about Alicia?
Don't worry, we'll get her there safely.
Suddenly, Agent Oxford's phone rang. He picked it up, listened, then hung up and looked around.
Roseanne's dead, and Mr. Alexander is gone.
He slammed his fist against the van. And where's Alicia? My heart raced.
She's on her way back to your house as we speak. She's fine.
Agent Oxford responded. So Miss Pitt was the mole? I asked quietly. Agent Oxford nodded. He said that he had been compiling information about Mr. Alexander for over 8 years. He was wanted for many crimes, but he also got away. Agent Oxford couldn't understand how he was always 2 steps ahead of the agency. Then he realized that he was unknowingly giving information to his wife, and she was telling Mr. Alexander. Agent Oxford knew Mr. Alexander had some accomplices, and they were getting close at revealing who they were. But with Miss Pitt's death, they suffered a huge setback. As soon as we pulled up in front of our van, Agent Oxford told us we had 10 minutes to get our things and get back into the van. My parents and I ran into the house and we froze. Written on the wall in red liquid was, "You're next." Agent Oxford told us to get back into the van and we headed to the safe house. That was about 5 years ago. My family and I are still in hiding since Mr. Alexander is still on the run. Oh, and Alicia did her surgery and she is able to hear with 75% clarity now, and we're closer than ever before. I often wondered, however, what would have happened if I never threw that firecracker?